On March 11th, 2011, the northeastern coast of Japan was struck by one of the most powerful earthquakes ever recorded. A massive 9.0 magnitude event that shifted the ocean floor and unleashed a towering tsunami upon the coastline. Entire towns were wiped from existence as the wall of water swallowed everything in its path. Buildings crumbled, roads disappeared, and nearly 18,000 lives were lost in an instant. But the devastation didn't end with the tsunami. As the waves receded, they revealed a shattered landscape and a looming crisis that would haunt the nation for years to come. The Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant, severely damaged by the earthquake and tsunami, experienced catastrophic meltdowns in 3 of its reactors. Massive amounts of radioactive material spilled into the air, soil, and sea, forcing hundreds of thousands of residents to flee. Entire towns became ghostly remnants of their former selves, frozen in time with homes abandoned, cars still parked, and personal belongings strewn across what were once lively neighborhoods. The world watched in horror as Japan faced not only a humanitarian and environmental catastrophe, but an emotional and spiritual one as well. Amid the wreckage, something unexplainable began to surface, something that science and reason couldn't account for. Survivors, reeling from unfathomable grief, started to report eerie encounters with spirits, the ghosts of those who had perished so suddenly in the disaster. These encounters became widespread, seeping into the fabric of devastated communities, serving as chilling reminders of the disaster's enduring impact. As radiation leaked from Fukushima Daiichi, the surrounding area became uninhabitable. A wasteland of evacuated towns, radioactive hotspots, and broken lives. Yet, within the eerie silence of these deserted streets, many claim they weren't alone. The sheer trauma of the event seemed to leave a spiritual scar on the land, and those who stayed behind or came to assist felt its haunting presence. One city in particular became a focal point of these supernatural stories, Ishinomaki, where the loss of life was among the greatest. Taxi drivers began sharing unsettling experiences. They would pick up passengers who appeared completely ordinary until they vanished. Drivers reported seeing soaked figures, often dressed in clothing from the day of the disaster, asking to be taken to places that no longer existed, homes or districts that had been obliterated by the tsunami. One story stands out. A driver picked up a young woman who was drenched and shivering. She quietly asked to be taken to Minamihama, a district the driver knew had been leveled by the waves. Despite his hesitation, he drove her there. As they neared the ruins, he turned to ask for further directions, only to find the back seat empty. The woman had disappeared without a sound. No door opening, no trace left behind. Stories like this became common. Are you enjoying today's story? Smash that subscribe button so you never miss another spine-chilling tale. Let's get back to the video. The spirits of those lost in the tsunami were still trying to return home, unaware they had passed on. Rescue workers, too, reported strange occurrences. In areas where recovery efforts continued, some claimed to hear faint cries for help or voices calling out from the wreckage. Yet no one could be found. Others saw figures standing among the rubble, only for them to vanish upon approach. These spectral encounters were not confined to the disaster zones. In makeshift shelters and temporary housing, survivors experienced unsettling phenomena. Many reported knocks on their doors late at night, despite being isolated. Some described feeling touches while they slept, only to wake up to an empty room. And others saw loved ones who had perished, standing silently in the corner of a room or outside, their expressions filled with sorrow. One woman, who had moved into temporary housing, recounted hearing a soft knock on her door one night. When she opened it, she found a young boy dripping with water, asking if she had seen his mother. When she tried to speak to him, he simply turned and walked away. She followed, but by the time she reached the edge of the housing complex, he was gone. Later, she learned that many children from her hometown had been swept away by the tsunami, never to be found. Some survivors believed they were being haunted by the eerie, restless spirits from Japanese folklore, often tied to traumatic or unnatural deaths. The eerie are said to remain earthbound, bound by powerful emotions such as grief, regret, or anger, without proper funerals or rituals to guide them to the afterlife. Many believe the spirits of the tsunami's victims were wandering, searching for peace in a world they no longer recognized. Beyond individual stories, entire towns became infamous for their supernatural atmosphere. In the abandoned zones around Fukushima, eerie silence engulfed the streets. Those who returned, either to help clean up or retrieve belongings, described a heavy, palpable presence, as though the dead were watching them. Even seasoned rescue workers admitted to hearing voices, footsteps, or feeling an overwhelming sadness as they moved through the ruins. The ghost stories that emerged from Fukushima are deeply intertwined with the trauma and grief left in the disaster's wake. Some believe these sightings are psychological manifestations of survivors' overwhelming sense of loss. The sudden, tragic deaths of so many, coupled with Japan's spiritual traditions, created fertile ground for these spectral encounters. In Japan's rural areas, spiritual practices emphasize the importance of guiding spirits to the afterlife. Without proper rites, it's believed that the dead might linger, believed to be trapped between worlds. In this context, these ghost sightings might represent a collective expression of grief, a nation struggling to process an unimaginable tragedy. For others, particularly those in affected communities, these spirits are very real. The belief in eerie offers solace to some, suggesting that the spirits can be helped through prayer and memorial services. Many towns began organizing large events, offering food and prayers in hopes that the spirits could find peace and move on to the afterlife. As the years passed, these ghost stories persisted, serving as a haunting reminder of the disaster. Though fewer in number, they remain a testament to the emotional and spiritual wounds left by the earthquake, tsunami, and nuclear meltdown. Whether seen as a trauma-induced manifestations or genuine encounters with the dead, these ghostly figures embody the grief, confusion, and longing that many feel when faced with sudden loss. For those who believe, these encounters offer a chance to connect with the dead, providing a sense of closure in a world forever altered by catastrophe. Thanks for watching.